Hello and welcome to Newswire. I'm Ayza Omar. US President Donald Trump has met with Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum. President Trump says that the United States can help resolve the Kashmir issue, making this effectively the third time he's offered to mediate the Jammu and Kashmir conflict since the BJP-led government stripped the only Muslim-majority state of its semi-autonomy last year in August. Now, President Trump says he's closely following the situation in occupied Kashmir. Pakistan, on its part, has been raising its voice for the people of occupied Kashmir who are living under a strict curfew with absolutely no internet and mobile phone connectivity for over 5 months. The issue was raised once again by Prime Minister Imran Khan during his meeting at Davos. So let's take a listen to what both had to say.
We're doing more trade as it turns, and we're working together on some borders, and we're talking about Kashmir and the relation to what's going on with Pakistan and India. And if we can help, we certainly will be helping. We've been watching that and following it very, very closely. But it's an honor to be with my friend, and thank you very much. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Main issue, of course, is Afghanistan, because it concerns the US and Pakistan. And fortunately, we are on the same page. Both of us are interested in peace there and an orderly transition in Afghanistan with talks with Taliban and the government. And also, of course, India, it is a big issue for us. In Pakistan, it's a big issue. And of course, we always hope that the US would play its part in resolving it, because no other country can.
Now, US's point person for South Asian affairs, senior US diplomat Alice Wells, during her trip to Pakistan, has also been all praises on Pakistan's progress on the Financial Action Task Force, the global illicit financing watchdog. Now, she's also talked highly about Pakistan's progress in terms of its role in the US-Afghan-Taliban peace talks, and even Pakistan's mediatory role in the de-escalation efforts between US and Iran. Now, this comes at a pretty critical time for Islamabad, when it's been raising its concerns over false flag operations by its nuclear-armed neighbor as India continues ceasefire violations across the line of control. But how far can we read into US's support at this point when Washington itself seems to have a lot at stake? Let's find out. We have with us today Mr. Salman Bashir, an analyst and former foreign secretary, joining us today from Islamabad. And we also have with us Ms. Shamim Shawl, an executive member of the All Parties Hurriyat Conference, joining us today from Islamabad as well. If I may start with you, Mr. Bashir, about this meeting in itself and how we just played the conversation that took place between the two, President Trump and Prime Minister Khan. What are your sentiments when you hear the kind of words they're using, the terminology they're using with each other?
Well, thank you. I think, first of all, since July last year, when the Prime Minister visited Washington and had a meeting with President Trump, the trajectory of Pakistan-US relationship seems to be moving in the right direction. And there were, of course, very complimentary words from President Trump during his meeting with the Prime Minister yesterday. He said that the US-Pakistan relations were in better shape than ever before. So I think that is all good. I think Pakistan values the US support, especially at the bilateral level, the emphasis on trade and investments. I think, as you said, Alice Wells has been in and out of town here in Islamabad. And I think the picture is looking definitely much better. It's much rosier than it was in the previous years.
So you're seeing... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, as far as the general situation is concerned, the regional situation, of course, there are concerns. As far as Pakistan is concerned, regarding the situation with Kashmir, the situation with India, the ongoing efforts for some sort of arrangement between the US and the Taliban relating to Afghanistan. And to that has been added the tensions vis-a-vis US-Iran. So I think Pakistan sort of figures somehow in this region in all these concerns. And it is good to have a better understanding, good conversation with the US at that level.
Right, but is there a risk right now, Mr. Bashir, of overstating, maybe exaggerating even Islamabad's importance in this very complicated sort of dynamic here, the kind of role it's played with the de-escalation efforts at a time where US and Iran seemed at the brink of war with its visits to the Middle East, to Riyadh and Tehran? And also the role the kind of influence or the role it has in the US-Taliban-Afghan peace talks?
Well, I don't think, we cannot really overemphasize or overstate the importance of Pakistan in all this. But we are there, we are in the region, and we are equally being impacted by these tensions and the situation in the neighborhood. And of course, if we have a good conversation and some sort of an understanding with the US, which is an important player globally and in this region, then that adds to a degree of comfort, I think, for Pakistan.
I mean, the reason I ask this is essentially, Mr. because as Ambassador Wells also responded to one of the queries put forward to her in this trip about whether the US would do a quid pro quo with Islamabad in terms of, removing it or making efforts to remove it from the grey list, something that it is going to be sort of addressing in its meeting with the FATF in Paris in February. So she said, no, it's honestly all on Islamabad's merit, on the kind of efforts they're, partaking in. But honestly, it is also, we can't discount the fact that this entire dynamic is also based on a lot of soft power. I mean, while Pakistan is playing this role, you're saying it cannot be discounted that their role is important here, whether it's with the US-Taliban-Afghan talks or the Iran de-escalation. Could Islamabad expect a realistic response when it comes to Kashmir?
I don't think we are really looking for a quid pro quo. It is in our interest to see all efforts, to diffuse tensions in this region, especially as far as India and Kashmir are concerned. And of course, we realize that the US has a sort of a marginal role to play in that. They have been reluctant in the past. And I think even at the level of, at the operational level, I don't think the US can do much actually to dissuade India from pursuing the course it has pursued in Kashmir and internally, so far as the minorities are concerned. As far as Iran is concerned, of course, we have said that we are prepared to sort of not mediate but facilitate. I think the foreign minister has been to Tehran and Saudi Arabia and to the US.
Right.
So that is all that we can do. I don't think we have any illusions about
But do we have illusions on expectations here? Because the Prime Minister Modi has continuously shut off any kind of international intervention on the Kashmir conflict. I mean, what we've seen instead, not just the sort of outright violation of humanitarian, rights there, we've also seen a lot of sort of, saber rattling from India and these ceasefire violations. So can we expect the US, which in itself is taking on India over the S-400s, to take a more sort of measured and stronger stance?
Well, of course, I mean, we would like the US to take a more objective, if nothing else, an objective view of the situation and, of course, of the policies that Mr. Modi is following, which are not only bad for the region, but also bad for India itself. But we have not seen that being reflected in U.S. official statements so far. And there is talk of President Trump's visit to India probably next month. So what I mean to say here is that it's a complicated situation. U.S. has global interests vis-a-vis China, whom they consider as a rival, for which India somehow figures very large in their calculus. And it is our expectation. I think that the pitch that we can make to the U.S. is that to just take an objective view of the situation in South Asia, and in particular the policies that Mr. Modi is following.
Right. All right. Mr. Salman Bashir there, thank you so much for joining us. Coming to you, Mr. Shamim, Shawl, let's focus a little bit on the kind of terminology that was used here by Prime Minister Khan and President Trump. One point, Prime Minister Khan, in his closing remarks, he said something to the effect, let me just read out actually what he said, that India in itself is a big issue for us. In Pakistan, it's a big issue, of course. And then he says, we hope that the US would play its part in resolving it. He's referring to the Kashmir issue here. I mean, the kind of efforts that have been made, and also if one was to just look at the kind of body language Prime Minister Imran Khan has showed in this meeting, in this presser with President Trump, what is your interpretation at this point where it's been over 5 months, the situation in Jammu and Kashmir has not changed even one bit for the better of those 8 million who were besieged in these inhumanitarian sort of situation? What is your take on it? Do you feel that there is a sort of giving up of hope or not expecting much here from the US to play the kind of role it can in on India?
Thank you very much. I would like to welcome Pakistan's diplomatic efforts in international fora. The Prime Minister of Pakistan has expressed his serious concern about the saffron salt on Kashmir identity and freedom. The meeting was good. President Trump and Prime Minister, when they met, it was not invisible, but it was beyond that. And we need that this diplomatic drill and these efforts should have the concrete, something concrete for the Kashmiri people, because they are living a very serious, inhuman life there. In these circumstances, when we see the Hindutva diplomacy or Hindutva ideology in Kashmir, we need a whiff of fresh air and the fruit of their struggle by choosing a settled political future. And therefore, the condition that are there, we observe differently at different places, is very serious. And the recent interview of the ex-general of India, the top military commander, has created a shock wave, and when he suggested that de-radicalization camps in Kashmir. What is this radicalization? They need to create new these interrogation centers. They want to create new places for the people to have the fear and to develop the fear and torture them, and this is what the ideology they mean. And this will be another part of what we say the demographic change. It will be in bullocks, they will arrest the people, and then they will nobody will be allowed, as we have seen in the recent these months, that not Indian parliamentarians, not civil society members are allowed to meet the people, the normal people, the civil society, the journalists. Therefore, this is a very threatening and alarming, and therefore we must condemn it in all levels. And we wish that Prime Minister of Pakistan, as when he visited this economic forum, World Economic Forum Committee, and when he was there, he met different personalities, the head of the states, and he showed his and he thanked the different people for supporting on the Kashmir. We need this type of diplomacy and this type of statements and this type of relationship of the Prime Minister of Pakistan, that therefore we can address the issue. Otherwise, India will never try, and India will try to get out of it, because he wants to make it an internal issue. But when we see these arrangements, when we have seen the statement of the Security Council, the Secretary General of the Security Council, it shows that it is not an internal issue of India. It is an international issue, and it should be addressed accordingly.
Right. And you're talking about how this narrative needs to be continuously highlighted, the way Pakistan is doing it. But also, while India argues that Jammu and Kashmir and the way it is gone ahead and added Article 370 is an internal issue, the internal issue that actually is an internal issue is what it's seeing its own sort of this right-wing Hindutva policies backfiring, which is the CAA, the protest. I mean, does it worry you now that it continues despite the protests in India? Does it worry you that even the Supreme Court has not been able to put a stay on this law and instead has just meagerly asked the government of India to respond? Does it worry you that how this will reflect on the issue that is Jammu and Kashmir's?
It was an internal issue. Why were not they able to have this operation completed during these 30 years in presence of 100,000 troops? They were not able to kill this mass movement. They were not able to kill the voice of the people of Jammu and Kashmir who are struggling for their basic rights, right to self-determination, as guaranteed by the UN resolutions. Therefore, India was not in these 5 months. If we see what has been happening in 30 years, leave what they did with the Kudan Poshpora. Today, it is a Gav Kadal massacre day today. In this Gav Kadal massacre, you have heard that hundreds of people were, when they were proceeding towards the funeral of a few people who were killed by Indians, they fired on, and hundreds of the people were killed on this day, on January 22nd, and it was in the early 90s. These massacres, what was the massacre? The main reason of the massacres was to repress the people of Jammu and Kashmir. When they saw that it is not working, now they, after finishing this or changing the constitution to 370, when they abrogated 35A, they didn't get the result. Now this is another assault. This is another repression type of on the youth. They know that youth are facing Indian troops, youth are facing them logically, legally. Therefore, they have no way to come out of it. And then they say that these centers will be open. They will open these centers inside, outside Kashmir, and then they will repress them, and they will start the same fear phobia and the repression and operation.
And essentially to the end, Mrs. Shamim, Shawl, just to conclude here, because we're running out of time, and essentially to the end that the end goal here is to change the demographic of a Muslim state, a majority Muslim state there, effectively by allowing everybody else from essentially Hindus to migrate into Jammu and Kashmir, something that the Article 370 sort of protected against. Now, with this, thank you so much for adding to this conversation, Ms. Shawl, but we will now take a quick short break, and we'll be back to further this conversation to sort of discuss the impact this is having on India as a regional player. Welcome back to Newswire. Now let's further the conversation a little bit, especially in terms of the kind of impact the regional developments are having on India. Now, the rivalry we've seen between these two superpowers, China and the US, is very different in today's age as compared to the time when the Cold War era, when US and USSR were fighting off their enmity. Now, the current superpower rivalry is in a time where there is a multipolar world, and it's got a multidimensional approach to it, especially how regional powers align themselves behind these two. And India, it is being argued by analysts, is isolating itself by lacking a multi-vector strategy. That is what we're essentially going to try and look at with our analysts. Now, just a quick snapshot. China's naval presence in the Indian Ocean region, it continues to grow, raising concerns, of course, in the West. Now, it's invested a lot, China that is, in port facilities, whether it's in Pakistan or Sri Lanka, and more recently in Bangladesh and Burma. Moreover, what we've seen is that China's economic expansion plans with the Belt and Road Initiative, they're also growing as the number of countries signing up to be part of this Belt and Road Initiative increases. And this, in turn, also increases the concerns that the US has about losing its dominance, whether it's geopolitical or economical, to Beijing. Now, with the spread of what we're seeing, China's People's Liberation Army and Navy, the concerns are not just limited to the US. Europe has also got a lot to be concerned about, especially because if there was a conflict in this region, it would greatly interfere with the kind of global trade routes this region sees, and those impact European economies. So while officially Beijing has constantly rejected the notion that it's not doing any such thing, that is establishing overseas naval bases, but then we do question, why does it even matter at a time when US has gone ahead and done exactly that? However, the real reason we are trying to explore all of this is to see in the current scenario what is unfolding in the Middle East, with the US, Afghan-Taliban talks, and of course the Jammu and Kashmir conflict, with the BRI developing on the side. is India essentially isolating itself? So without further ado, let me introduce who we will be talking to. We have with us today Mr. Ravi Srivastav, an analyst joining us from Mumbai. And we have Mr. Rajeev Jaitly, a spokesperson for the Bharatiya Janata Party, talking to us from Delhi. Welcome to both of you. Now, before we begin, I'd like to, Mr. Jaitly, and this is addressed to you, try to bring up to speed on the current situation in India. The latest is that the Supreme Court did not put a stay on the CAA. It's just given 4 weeks to the BJP-led government to respond to the 143 different inquiries that had been filed to the Supreme Court about the validity of the CAA. Now, of course, the Citizenship Amendment Act in itself has seen a huge response from Indians all across the country. There are protests. We've spoken to you about this before. Do you still stand by the argument you've given to us earlier that this is all the doing of the opposition parties, that in essentially India is totally aligned with the BJP's move to introduce the CAA?
It's true. No Indian is going to affect by this law, this act. Everybody knows about it. So, this is politically motivated protest which is going on in one place or two places or a couple of places there in India. But nobody is aware when we raise questions that how it is going to affect Indian people. Nobody has answer on that. So, this is just because of the people, those who are persecuted from Pakistan, Bangladesh and Afghanistan on religious ground. So we have given protection to those people. So what is harm in that? Why people are demanding? When you talk about CAA, nobody has no answer on it. Nobody can say, people are asking that it should not be there on the religious ground. So there is no answer. Whether it is opposition party, whether those who are sitting on the protest, they can't even tell. And the maximum people are not even aware of the full form of CAA, those who are protesting there.
So you believe that essentially this is, again, as you had said earlier, the agenda of the opposition parties to create mistrust, misinformation. But if you're looking at it from a more global perspective, if we're going to just take a look even to the neighbors here who have expressed their concerns, Bangladesh has come out and pretty much said that this was unnecessary, even though Sheikh Hasina has said that this is an internal matter. There are concerns raised by Malaysia. There are concerns raised by Nepal. So, you think this is unfounded, their concerns about the CAA, the NRC, the NPR?
No, even if you look at Malaysia, Malaysians member of parliament has said that it was personal view of our prime minister who has commented on CAA, who has commented on Kashmir, who has commented on other issues. Even Malaysian government has detached themselves from the statement made by their prime minister. So, and when you talk about Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina has clearly said that if Bangladeshi people wants to come back to Bangladesh, we will take them back. So what is harm in that? People, those who belong to whichever country, they should go there only.
And the kind of response we have seen on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum, where the US President Donald Trump has once again spoken up and offered, it seems, for the third time, mediation efforts over the Jammu and Kashmir dispute, that is, the question of the abrogation of the Article 370, the tensions it is creating across the line of control between these two nuclear-armed states. How do you see that response?
Oh, even when you talk about President Trump, their government has clearly said that we have never made such statement. They have given this in black and white, that this is internal matter of India. So we should not comment on that. Every statement which has been made by the president or prime minister of other countries, their government has condemned that. Their government has said that we are not in favor of those statements. So I think that those statements are immaterial then.
No, but you see, if the Indian government has condemned statements, whether they are coming from Afghanistan or Bangladesh, it doesn't really help your cause, does it? Because this is, after all, not an isolated country. You are dealing on whether geopolitical terms or economic terms with all of them. The former Afghan president, Hamid Karzai, he categorically stated that this classification of the CAA offers citizenship to non-Muslim minorities in Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Pakistan, that this is, what are they talking about? He even said, and this is during an interview to an Indian newspaper, he said, we don't have minorities persecuted in Afghanistan. The whole country is persecuted. We have been in war for so many years.
See, this is an entirely different matter. Our matter is in Supreme Court of India, and they are hearing this particular case. And those who have filed a petition on CAA or NRC or NPR, Court has said that we have been given 4 weeks time. We will respond back to them because it is a matter of constitution and law. And when it comes to constitution, only Supreme Court can decide about it. They have formed a 5 judges bench on this particular case.
Okay, so now you're talking about the legal process, but okay, let's talk about the kind of isolation India is facing. Japan has been a very old ally of India. The blow really came from the Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe when he cancelled his trip to Assam, and this is the trip that he cancelled because of protests in India against the CAA. When they got out of hand, they got violent. It was being reported that Mr. Abe was planning to announce major deals, Japanese investments in the state.
Isolation, you can talk about isolation only in that case when presidents of different countries are against this particular law. France is with us, US is with us, Germany is with us, all these people. I mean, you can talk about even United Nations. In the United Nations only, China, who wanted to raise this question, all countries have objected. I mean, they were not interested in having discussion on that. So, I mean, we got to know that even Prime Minister of Pakistan has made a statement in Pakistan that they are ready to hear, which was false. And later on, you also came to know, I think.
So, Mr. Jaitly, here, let me bring in Mr. Srivastav. He wants to say something to this. Mr. Srivastav?
Ayza, I think Mr. Jaitly is living in a different world altogether. He has said that 1 or 2 places there are agitations. The entire country is burning. The agitations are every nook and corner of the country and people are on the streets. I think he knows about his own city where he is living in Delhi. The Shaheen Bagh protests are going on for the last 42 days. And the women are sitting with their children in their lap and they are sitting for day and night. What I am saying is that this, in the whole process, that the Vikas Purush, Mr. Narendra Modi, who was to bring that Vikas, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas and all those things, the Vikas has taken a back seat. There is no Vikas. Mr. Rajeev Jaitly talks about that particular PM or particular president is making a statement, but his country is not with him. I mean, what kind of funny statement is he? If a person makes a statement...
Are you aware of anything? Just go and read it first.
Okay, Mr. Srivastav, hold that thought. Mr. Srivastav, hold that thought. Let me also add here, Mr. Jaitly, while you talk about that maybe Japan might be one isolated case...
I would request you to give me 4 to 5 seconds. Prior to going ahead in this discussion, I would request you to please give them identification, the person, Mr. Srivastav, who is speaking on your channel. He belongs to Aam Aadmi Party. He is not a political analyst. I want to make you clear about it.
Mr. Jaitly, on the same note...
I'm a political person. I don't belong to any party. I don't belong to any party. I'm sorry.
I can show you sitting on news channel defending Aam Aadmi Party.
Mr. Jaitly, why don't you respond to this?
And don't talk about it.
Okay, Mr. Srivastav, hold on a second. We've got a lot of ground to cover here. Mr. Jaitly, you talk about maybe Japan being an isolated incident here. What about the US? Now, it's historically always been very quick to offer the kind of support it's given to India, but recently it's given the US State Department given a very sort of not so thinly veiled warning to New Delhi, urging it to reconsider purchasing Russia's S-400 missile defense systems. Yes? Now, this comes at a time where you've got to admit that with the kind of regional dynamics, the kind of US-Taliban-Afghan talks going on, the kind of de-escalation efforts going on with US and Iran, the role India's neighbor maybe is playing, India's really been given a kind of a very different treatment. Do you think that has nothing to do with the BJP government's, whether it is their own internal policies or external foreign policies?
First of all, I want to make you clear, every country in the world has got right to form, to give them give identity to their citizenships, to their citizens. So even Pakistan, when you talk about USA, when you talk about other countries, they have got their own citizenship norms. Similarly, if India comes up with that, what's wrong with this particular act? And when we are talking about giving citizenship to only those people who have been persecuted by
Constitution. Ayza, can I come in, please?
No, you will not going to decide about Constitution. Constitution will be decided by Supreme Court of India. Who are you to decide about Constitution?
Mr. Jaitly, hold on. Okay, Mr. Jaitly, 1 second. Mr. Srivastav.
You have to give it to everyone. And first of all, what evidence we have got of the
everyone you're talking about?
happening
Who
in
everyone?
Pakistan or
Who
Afghanistan
everyone?
or Bangladesh?
Are you talking about
or
people
what
from different countries to settle down in
persecution you
India?
are talking about? If 1970 that persecution happened, what have you been doing so
I
long?
think you should ask some political people, real political analysts to come and discuss on this particular subject.
Okay, Mr. Jaitly,
I'm
that's
asking
the way to proceed with this conversation. This conversation is essentially about the kind of role, Mr. Jaitly, this is not a personal vendetta that you both can take out on this platform. We are trying to say here, we're trying to highlight here whether it is unfounded, the concerns that India, with the kind of domestic and foreign policy, has isolated itself. Here, let me give you another example. The Chinese president, Xi Jinping.
All countries are with India except China on some ground. Whereas China to have made statements on different occasions that it is a matter of India. It is a matter of India. It is their internal matter. You talk about when we rejected their OB meeting in China. What China's statement came on that moment? They simply said that it is a matter of India. Even Jammu and Kashmir is we have nothing to do with that. These are the statements made for China. I mean, when we talk about isolation, all major countries are with India on this subject, whether it is CAA, whether it is Jammu and Kashmir. I don't know, what Srivastav is going to tell about you, that whether it is a part of India or he's going to make a different statement on this.
Okay, Mr. Srivastav, go ahead.
I should be given fair time to put up my point of view, please.
Go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, India is in the whole process getting isolated in the Asian region itself. There, Bangladesh, Sheikh Hasina made a statement. That the Malaysia made a statement.
Mr. Jaitly, one by one.
Rajeev, your time is up.
You've got to respect the protocol here. Mr. Jaitly, hold on.
You have stopped palm oil import from Turkey, from Malaysia. You have stopped. See, this is how these people behave. They don't want to listen the reply. What is the India's position today with its own neighbors? Whether it is Nepal, whether it is Bangladesh, whether it is Myanmar, whether it is Afghanistan, and they talk about the Germany, the US, the France, and all those countries. I mean, what is your position within your own neighborhood? That China's initiative of Belt and Road Initiative, that India opposed that and they did not participate. And the more than 100 countries are already on the board with China and they are going ahead with that. They are making maritime roads and they are making the roads and rail connectivity to the Europe via Africa and all. There's such a big multi-trillion dollar
Mr. Srivastav, don't forget the regional comprehensive economic partnership that India walked out of, the one that created a common trade bloc of 10 Asian nations along with China.
Yeah, the problem with India is that they are so engrossed with their domestic issues that they are not able to proceed on diplomatic fronts. And that's the reason that they are finding problem with everything. Even China is making a road to Myanmar, some 1700 kilometer road. And it has got already 100 nations on board. And they are going to have another in April 2020. They are going to have another meeting for that. So the influence of China is increasing on the region, very aggressively. And I had visited Sri Lanka of late, and I found that all Chinese are there, and a lot of infrastructure development is being done through them. And the Hampantota, that port has already been taken over by the China. They have bought it from Sri Lanka. So such is the situation, and India is not able to concentrate on their diplomatic relationship even with their neighbors. They have stopped the palm oil import from Malaysia. It was a multi-million crore business. So that's how they are getting isolated in their own region. And main reason is that within India, there is lot of resistance to the BJP policies. Especially on CAA, there is lot of resistance. People are coming on road, and the Supreme Court has given them 4-week time. But the matter is still open. Which way it will turn? But there is a huge protest across the country, which is creating an unrest and which is affecting the economy in totality. And that's a main reason India's GDP has gone down. India's position on the world trade has weakened. That's the main reason that there are a lot of unrest within the country.
But Mr. Srivastav, and just closing this debate essentially with this question, what way is there left for the BJP government? Because it almost seems like they've got blinders. They don't see the fallacies in their ways. What Modi has done in the previous tenure as well as this one is constantly turn their backs to agreements, trade agreements, or to even wielding their soft power in a way that would have sort of helped their position, whether it's economic or having, geopolitical dominance to even win allies back over. But instead what they've seen is, so what is the way forward?
See, that the government would have taken all the chief ministers of the state, all political parties into confidence before passing such discriminatory anti-constitutional act. That would have been a right approach. Now they are saying that some misguided people and some confused people and the opposition is misguiding everyone. I mean, this is not the way to work, to have anything. You should have built up consensus. You should have talked to people beforehand. Now they are saying that we are going to convince people, we are going to 3 crore families, we are going to talk to them, we are going to explain them. This is not the way. This shows very immature leadership, and especially after this second election, when Mr. Modi won back second time, he has absolutely gone, I would say out of the head that he has passed the kind of acts which have been passed, whether it is abrogation of 370, whether it is, Ram Mandir judgment came from the Supreme Court, and now the CAA, NRC and NPR. These all three are causing a huge amount of unrest. And this government should go back, should sit back.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ravi Srivastav there joining us from Mumbai. Now, I'd like to add another voice to this conversation. We have with us Mr. Khurshid Kasuri, the former foreign minister, joining us on call from Lahore. Thank you, Mr. Kasuri, for taking out the time. The debate essentially here is that India has isolated itself, what with a very weak foreign policy as seen in especially the past 6 months, but also the kind of internal conflicts that has pretty much shot itself in the foot with the CAA. The response it's getting from Bangladesh, from Afghanistan, criticizing this move. And now what we've just seen, the US President Donald Trump, while talking to Prime Minister Imran Khan, again offer to mediate over Jammu and Kashmir. Do you see India having gone ahead and now isolated itself?
The leadership in India may try and mislead the international community and particularly its own people. They're saying, oh, this is very innocent. It's only those who were the Hindus who have been not treated well in Bangladesh, Pakistan or Afghanistan. Only they are meant to be accommodated, and it's not meant to discriminate against Muslims. This is obviously nonsense, because the whole idea is actually not either to support either Hindus or Muslims. It is to polarize and to get votes. The whole idea is negative, and they feel that the message to their base, which may be 30%, 31%, whatever the base is loud and clear, that if you can maltreat Muslims, whether it's in India or in Kashmir, it will yield electoral dividends. And they were probably proven right that in the last elections, there were electoral dividends. Now, that's a separate matter, that such dividends cannot take you through your entire tenure. So yes, there is not just negative reaction from surrounding countries, but all over the world, particularly those countries that believe in human rights, which means the whole of North America, the whole of Europe, and therefore, these are the countries that control international media. Therefore, and all the human rights organizations, they condemned India's actions there. So of that, there is no doubt, even among the Indians. Those who can think, although Mr. Modi has fairly successfully managed to calm down the Indian media, but there is no doubt, and I follow the Indian media and the international media on a daily basis, that the Indians are aware of the fact that it's causing them a lot of damage in the foreign policy realm. And in fact, there was some program where they had expert former retired ambassadors and all, and said the cost was being paid by India's foreign policy.
So just the foreign policy in itself, it's already been seen as rather weak here, but with the CAA, the NRC, the NPR, all of that and the kind of protests, But would you say that economically, India has also been losing a lot of ground here? We've seen just recently, this month, January 18th, I believe, where the Chinese president, he went ahead to Myanmar and they signed some 33 agreements related to infrastructure and economic zones and industrial parks. Now, this is, of course, creating a very strategically important port in the Indian Ocean for the Chinese. And at the same time, what we've seen is India constantly distance itself from the BRI project. Do you see its current policies affecting it, isolating it economically also?
I have absolutely no doubt India can blame itself because China had actually two prongs. One was CPEC, and the whole purpose was that China has not just one purpose, it is a multi-purpose. One was, of course, trade, to facilitate trade, to develop its underdeveloped areas, but also to avoid a possible blockade in the straits in the case of hostilities in the South China Sea. So they were trying to avoid the blockade there. But India, whereas Bangladesh and Myanmar are both interested in this prong, but India tries its best to prevent that from happening. So the first phase, anyway, is complete. And my fear is, in fact, not fear, but I'm very certain that if India doesn't change its mind, not only Myanmar, which has already done this, Bangladesh will also find some means of getting connected to it, and India will have itself to blame for this. And Bangladesh is anyway also upset because although Indians are not naming Bangladesh, but everybody in India and Bangladesh understands that the negative and pejorative references to termites are actually to Bangladeshis. And no one in Bangladesh is prepared to stomach this national insult. So the Indian government, dominated by Hindutva supporters, is so completely obsessed by the idea of continuing to win elections by polarizing its electorate, even at the cost of its economy, even at the cost of its foreign policy.
So even in terms of how it is trying to handle portraying Pakistan's image in the international forum, I mean, the kind of policies that Prime Minister Modi had secured his second term in, particularly sort of trying to isolate Pakistan through the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation, SAARC, do you think that's worked out in their favor or it's completely backfired?
How can it when the members of SAARC are actually bypassing India and having direct links with China? Bhutan is the case, Nepal is a case in point, Sri Lanka is another. And these are major South Asian. Bangladesh is also developing its links with China. So I think in an attempt to make sure that nobody enters what the Indians regard as their territory or their area of influence, in a time where economy matters. Now, in the case of China, it's not only its economy, its military might is much greater than that of India. So instead of trying to help connectivity, help Indian economy, help reduction of poverty in South Asia, India's nationalist government has gone on a totally, unrealistic, adopted an unrealistic approach. And they feel that in the name of nationalism, they're able to lead their people to find out that the way their economy is going down will not be helped by the polarizing politics. Because the first message that the investor, forget foreign, even the local investor gets it when you have daily demonstrations all over India, that, things could change in a jiffy in India. And therefore, the investor looks for a long-term gestation period.
Just last question, we're running out of time. How do you see the US-India relationship evolving in the current scenario, considering, of course, the thinly veiled threat they've given to India, this US State Department, of possible sanctions if they don't reverse their decision on the S-400 purchase from Russia?
if they actually impose sanctions, it will be a very big news indeed. They have not so far imposed those sanctions on Turkey, which is this NATO ally. So I'd like to see what happens in that case. But even otherwise, if a country's economy is going down, if it's open to social turmoil, if American and Western media is giving extensive coverage to it, it's bound to have an impact. Yes, I agree. It is in America's long-term interest because they wish to contain China, to build up India against China. But the United States alone cannot do that.
Right.
India will have to set its own house order. From what we can see, despite America's desire to build up India, the sort of policies they have adopted, the polarizing policies, are not good for either their economy or for their image. Well, after all, America and India were very proud of saying that one was the world's largest democracy and the other the world's strongest democracy. How can you call a country democratic, which is distinguishing between a citizen on the basis of religion?
All right, Mr. Khurshid Kasuri, thank you so much for taking out the time and giving us your analysis on this, whether or not India has taken off on a road to isolationism, except for Mr. Jaitly, the representative of BJP, the leading ruling government of India. We have pretty much got the consensus here that yes, not only with soft power, but hard power, India has continued on a path, imploding as it seems with its local policies and also rather jittery foreign policies. And with that, we've run out of time. So we will see you next week with a new string of episodes from Newswire. Till then, goodbye.